Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn and my channel is Making with Marilyn. Now I do all things crafty, but on today's video I'm going to show you how I made these beautiful sublimation tumblers. I just love how they turned out. So if you're interested in seeing this process, come on, let's hang out for a while. Now just recently I've seen some YouTubers making 3D tumblers. Now they're not really three-dimensional, but the designs they use have a three-dimensional look. So I decided to try it for myself. So here's one of the designs. Thought that was beautiful, and I got both of these designs off of Creative Fabrica, and then here's the other design. Now the other things I'll use, I'm going to use a couple of sublimation tumblers. I got these from Real Cant, and they do come with straw sets, tape. I'm not going to use this tape. I have a tape that I'm going to use instead. They come with the little rubbery bottoms, and then it also comes with shrink wrap. I'm going to use a tumbler press, and so I won't be using that shrink wrap. The tape I'm going to use today is this beautiful pink tape. Thank you, Angel B, for showing your pink tape. I loved it, and I found it on Amazon, so I'll use that. I'm going to use a rotary cutter, this ruler with the cork backing, some heat-resistant gloves, just this little tumbler holder that I made. I do have a video on this. If you're interested, I'll put a link to it in the video description. And then, again, like I talked about earlier, I'll use a tumbler press. Now, one more thing to mention is I am going to clean my tumblers with some rubbing alcohol. I use 91% rubbing alcohol, and so I'll use that and a paper towel. Okay, so the lid is already in the box with the tumblers. Let's go ahead and take that off, set it aside. Now, I usually have my rubbing alcohol in a little spray bottle, but I can't find it. I'll probably find it right after the video. So this is what I bought most recently, 91% isopropyl alcohol, Equate brand, so I think that's well marked. Now, if you use a spray bottle, make sure you don't accidentally get any of that spray on your images. Now, here's the first print. I thought that was beautiful. And this is so not like me. I usually like bright colors, but I just thought that was gorgeous. I stretched it. There's some you can't see here because the printer only prints so large, but there was more white space up here, so I stretched it. And then see how there was so much gray over here? I didn't want that gray. And then I put a box around it the size I wanted to cut it. So by stretching it, I got rid of some of those parts I didn't really like. All right, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ruler just inside the little black line, and then I'm going to trim that off. Now, I'll probably speed through a lot of this because, well, cutting these is pretty boring, but I printed these designs at 9.4 inches wide and 8.2 inches tall. Now, that might be a little bit large, but if I have to cut some of the extra off, it's not a big deal. I'm really not losing anything important if I have to cut a tiny bit off. Now, I'm not sure if I said that quite right. So I printed this one at the 9.4 by 8.2. This image I stretched larger than that, but then I put that little box or that little rectangle around it, and the inside dimensions of it were 8.2 by 9.4. All right, now to do a reality check, I flip my tumblers over so that the top is on the bottom, and then I flip my image over, and I still have way too much image. So I'm going to cut that down some more. And then as far as diameter or width, I have too much of it too. So I'm going to cut this down until it looks like I want it to look. Now here's what happened. I should have measured these. I just went with a basic size and it was way too large. Different brands of tumblers need different sizes, and so even though you might be using all 20-ounce tumblers, go ahead, make a little template. Just cut one out with your Cricut or just cut it out with your scissors the size you think it should be. Wrap that around your tumbler. If it works, you know you have the right size. Or you can be like me and just keep cutting it down. All right, so that's pretty close on the height. It's just about even with the bottom. Okay, so I had somebody ask me about the ghosting, what they called the ghosting. And so I asked them, did they mean blurring or did they mean white spots? And she said she meant white spots. So we're going to talk about that as I wrap this. Hopefully it turns out nice. Okay, so the way I like to do mine, I like to have it flat on the table with the top side down because I want the paper to be almost exactly even with the top. So we're going to put that down like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it on here. That keeps it from rolling around. Now I'm going to get one piece of tape and tape in the middle. I'm going to put the tape on the top side, the paper that's on the top side, and then while I'm squeezing this together, I'm going to go ahead and tape that down. Okay, I want to check and make sure it goes all the way to the top. If it doesn't, I can put my hand in and just slightly shove it up like that. But you don't want this paper way above, or then as you bend it, it's going to cause little wrinkles. And at the top, that can be one reason why you get those white spots. All right, we're going to call that good. Now the tape that's on top is now closest to me. I'm squeezing together. Whoops, I just pulled my little tool apart because I never used glue on it. It was so tight that I just put it together and left it. You could use glue on that if you don't want that to happen. All right, so now I'm just going to take this piece, pull it really tightly over the top, and go ahead and put it inside. Now we're going to do something very similar at the bottom. So I got too much tape that time, but it'll be okay. Putting my tape on the top piece, pulling those together, and then just using my thumb to put it down. All right, I really don't need that much tape. Let's cut part of that off. I can definitely use that for something else later. Okay, so when you have a little bit of extra taper that's going to slightly wrap around this beveled part, that's when you can have problems. And if you have it so long that you're actually pulling it to the bottom, you can have even worse problems. So first thing I'm going to do is just push that over so it's nice and tight. Now, to me, the top is more important than the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the top to finish my wrapping. And yes, I use more tape than most, but it has worked for me, and so I stick with it. So I'm going to put one piece fairly tightly along the top edge of the paper. And so you see how that tape is pretty much even with the top of the paper. And then I'm going to put one more piece around and have it stick up more. Now when I do this, I like to pull from the paper that's on the top across the other paper. So not pulling against the seam, but closing it down more. Okay, so this time I have it sticking above, and I'm pulling really, really tight. And the tape I'm using now doesn't stretch as much as the tape I usually use, but I think that's okay. Pulling it super tight, and then I'm going around and I'm pushing straight in, just kind of getting that tape to where I want it to be. and then I'm going to push straight over. Now there are people that don't do all this and they get great looking tumblers, but my first lot of tumblers, I don't remember how many, but a lot of tumblers that I saw issues with and I wasn't that happy with. So that's why I tape this way. And then if there's a little pucker, like you might see there, I like to go ahead and rub that out. Okay. All right, so there's the top. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. Now the piece of paper that's on top is on this right side. And so this time I'm going to pull to the left. Again, this first piece, I don't do it super tight. Then I'm just going to start forming my paper around the bottom edge of my tumbler. Now this is a super dark design, and so on super dark designs, especially ones that aren't real busy or don't have a lot of white in them, to me this bottom is where you can typically see issues. So have that way above the tumbler, or in this case, since it's the bottom, way below the tumbler, and stretching. And as I stretch, I can see the paper kind of pulling away from the tumbler. And the reason you can see that is this is a beveled edge. This is not straight at the bottom. It is beveled in. So now, everywhere where you see one of those little folds in the tape, that's a potential issue on your cup. And so I'm going to go around, because this design is one where I think those could easily show up. I'm going to go around and smooth those out. I can do it with my fingernail. I can do it with this little tool. And then lastly, I'm going to rub it really hard on this cutting mat. All right, tumbler number 1 is ready. I'm just going to fast forward that with this second one. Now in the intro, I forgot to tell you that I'm going to use some butcher paper. I like to wrap that around my tumblers just to protect this mat in the tumbler press. And then I use HTV Ront sublimation paper. All right, so we're going to go ahead and turn this on. There's a red switch over here. And then this comes with 4 presets. And so it came programmed with 4 presets, but I changed to preset number 1 slightly. So I push the 1 and I see it's 375 for 50 seconds. I push number 2, that's actually my rhinestone setting, and I haven't used 3 or 4 yet, but they have settings also. Now when I got it, preset number 1 was something like 350 degrees or 356, but I bumped it up to 375. All right, it's up to 375. Now, when you take your tumbler out, it's going to be really hot, so you need something to set it on. I got these off of Hiipoo for like $1 something, maybe $2, slightly over $2. But I use them to hold like my drinks. I use them to hold my tumblers. So I'll just put it right there. Now I want to start with my seam either at the back or the front. I like to do that because I feel like that's where you get the best pressure. Or maybe it's the best contact. Some people like to start with their seams up, and if that works for you, do that. But this time I have my seam facing me. Now you have to push enter and it starts counting down. All right, so we're going to open this up, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tumbler and spin it. I want you to see the seam go by and put that seam toward the back. You have to press enter to get back to 50 and then enter again to start counting down. All right, so we're going to take it out and set this over on this silicone mat, and then let's do tumbler number 2. Now you might have seen me switch tape. I didn't feel like this pink stuck to the metal inside quite as well as the brown did or the yellow. And the pink also didn't seem to stretch quite as much, and I like to have that stretch when I'm doing the top and the bottom. Now I'm using the same butcher paper. Because with this HTV romp paper, I don't find that the image bleeds through the backside of the paper. I still use this just for added protection, but usually I'm perfectly fine without having it bleed through the back. Now my other 2 little silicone mats are downstairs. Why are they downstairs? So let's see if I have enough room to fit both of them, and I do. So let's go ahead and shut this off. I'll get this cleaned up, and then let's come back and see how these turned out. All right, it's been 4 or 5 minutes, and since I did this one first, I can actually handle it. It's still warm. This one's still very, very hot. Now notice you can't see much through it. A lot of the times you hear people say when you see through it, that's a good sign, and it is. But remember, this was a really light design. You can see my name through it. Now this one, remember this was a dark design, you can definitely see more of that through the back of the paper. But with this HTV romp paper, I don't get too concerned if I can't see much. Because like I said earlier, it doesn't bleed through the back, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem to show through this as much as it does some other papers. All right, hopefully this is pretty. Okay, I have super high hopes for this one. As I said earlier, it really isn't what I would typically do. I usually like bright, but I just thought this was such a gorgeous design. All right, I'm going to try to get a peek down here. Ooh, that's pretty. I say that every time, don't I? But I honestly feel it every time. Now, there's been times where I haven't felt that when I've made an error in it, but most of the time they turn out really, really nicely. All right, are you ready? Isn't that beautiful? Now, mistakes that you make on this at the top and bottom are going to be harder to spot because it is so light. But I can see that's a really good top. There's the back seam. And there's the bottom. Look how crisp that line at the bottom is. All right. I'm a little more nervous about this one. That design was so dark, so vibrant, and really had no white in it to mask any errors at the top or bottom. Now, where you see that light line, that's the paper. That's how much overlap I had on the paper. That might be a little too much, but I think it'll be okay. I was being lazy. not taken the time to cut down the width of the paper as much as I did the height. But when I first saw that, I thought that was in the actual tumbler. All right, let's see this. Wow. Oh, that is gorgeous. Look at the back seam. It's right there. There's the top seam. Notice there's none of those puckering marks at the top seam. Now it looks like, yep, I can feel I have a little bit of paper on there where you see a little bit of white. That's some paper that's stuck on it. And there's the bottom seam. Now you can see a little bit of where the beveling is. You can see a little bit of ink there, but you can see a little bit of the bottom where the bevel is. So let me show you. If you have this sitting on a table, on this one, I didn't wrap it all the way down under, and you see a tiny little bit. A tiny bit. It's really not a big deal. And I'm looking down on it now because my face is up here and the tumbler's down there. I don't even see it from up here. But if you're truly down at eye level, that's how much white you can see. All right, I'm going to call these a success. I love this 3D effect. So pretty. So do you like this? Is this something you'd try? Which one's your favorite? Thanks so much for watching today, and until my next video, bye-bye. Now with these, it's not truly three-dimensional.